Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. I am your co-host, Devin Little, joined as always by my other co-host, Tony Wolak. Evan Sabrin has the day off because he is stuck in traffic. Hope he got out of there alive, Evan. Be sure to follow us over on YouTube, Spotify, X, Blue Sky, wherever you are. We are there too. For today's episode, we're doing something a little different. Trade deadline is a little over a month away, so Tony, over to you. Let's have you explain this a little bit more.
Yeah, so this is about the time when teams are bringing in all their scouts and their front office to have meetings, have discussions about what to do for the rest of the season. Like, are they close to the playoffs? You know, what needs to be done to get there? What additions are needed? Do they want to sell? What prospects need a promotion? All the topics. So what Devin and I are going to do is play that role. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play Steve Yzerman, and Devin is going to play this awesome hybrid of Kris Draper and Shawn Horcoff. And we're going to have a meeting. We're going to be Detroit's front office talking about the trade deadline coming up, what this team needs, what's going on the rest of the season, and just make plans from that perspective. So with that, hope you enjoy. We're trying something a little different, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, so we're sitting here on January 30th, and we're 2 points out of the playoffs. So let's make our plans and figure out how we want to approach the rest of the season. We have the Four Nations tournament coming up, so the team will be off starting on February 9th, and we'll play another game until February 22nd. Then the trade deadline is on March 7th. So from the NHL team's perspective, from the Red Wings perspective, things have obviously gotten a lot better with McLellan leading the team. Penalty kill is trending in the right direction. The star players, Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Kane, Seider, they're all stepping up. There's a lot to like, but obviously there are ebbs and flows to the season, so this may not be sustained, the rest of the way. So it might be a good time to look at the trade market here. First off, let's kind of just take stock of the team, of what we have from from the Red Wings standpoint. Patrick Kane should be coming off IR soon. Comfer and Tarasenko should be good to go at some point on this Western Canada road trip. Jeff Petrie is a little further out, but should be back by the Four Nations tournament break or shortly thereafter. So team's getting healthier, and there's solid depth there. I've liked what I've seen from Soderblom since he's been called up. There's a little bit of roster flexibility with him and with Shine, but there's still needs with this team. Obviously, a top 6 forward would be great. A top 4 defenseman would be great. How about in Grand Rapids? What are you seeing from the team right now? Are there any players that are ready for NHL action? And how is the playoff chase looking from your perspective, for the AHL perspective?
Well, right now, the Grand Rapids Griffins are firmly in first place in the Central Division, looking like they're going to defend their division crown from last season. A lot of good things are happening down there. You've got an elite goalie tandem with Ville Husso and Sebastian Cossa, and then Jack Campbell's down there performing very well as well. You got a full-blown 3-headed monster down there. Up front, the main attraction right now is Nate Danielson, our team's top pick in the 2023 draft. He's making steady progress as a two-way centerman that plays in all sorts of situations. Obviously, just recently, Elmer Soderblom went back up to Detroit. We're definitely missing his size down there, but that's what the AHL is there for, to develop these players and send them to the NHL. A few other notable guys. We just got Carter Mazer back. That's huge. We're hoping that he has a strong second half. Obviously, we were all kind of thinking he might be pushing for a roster spot in the fall, but it wasn't meant to be. And then on the blue line, obviously, we called up William Wallander earlier in the season. Obviously, didn't get a game in, but does seem like we're thinking he's getting close. But there are a few others on the blue line that are making steady progress. In terms of who's getting ready to play some games, Dominic Shine's up in the NHL right now. I think he's a good veteran guy you can go to on occasion, but we're probably not talking about the veterans that you can call up here, right? We're probably talking about the prospects. I would say Sebastian Cossa obviously got his first NHL win this season. I think that if need be, he can come up and perform again. On up front, I still think uh, probably after a month or so, let him really get back up to speed. But I do think Carter Mazer can still challenge and prove himself worthy of an NHL spot. And I think that Nate Danielson might be right there too. Marco Casper got that one game in his D+1 season. I think especially after the trade deadline, if we still have Nate, I think he's somebody that maybe could be in line to get a taste in the NHL. Beyond that, there's a lot of guys that have a lot of promise, certainly worth keeping an eye on, and glad we have them. Excuse me. Uh, but I don't know that they're NHL ready in the same way that a Soderblom or a Albert Johansson was.
Is Danielson ready for, like, let's say he's dropped into the lineup? Can he ride out the rest of the year in Detroit, or does he need more time with Grand Rapids?
Right now, I lean towards more time. I think that him being a top six center in Grand Rapids is valuable experience for him. Playing in every situation, he plays on the power play, plays on the penalty kill. You know how we do things here in Detroit. We like to take things slow and let our players play a maximum amount of playing time that they can before getting to Detroit. So I do think that if you were to call him up, he would look fine and kind of show that promise. But if it's up to me, I think we let him just finish out the season, focus on the task in Grand Rapids, and then come into training camp next year ready to push.
All right, so let's take a look at the depth chart here. Starting at forward, we have Casper, Larkin, and Raymond on the top line, and this is when everyone's healthy. DeBrincat, Kopp, and Kane, Tarasenko, Comfort, Berggren, Soderblom, Rasmussen, and Fisher. Defense, we have Sherratt and Sider, Edmondson and Johansson, and then Gustafson and Jeff Petrie with Talbot and Lyon and net. Then there's also with that we have three spares, three scratches: Veleno, Mott, and Hall. And that leaves us with about $2.5 million in cap space. This will change a little bit in the days and weeks leading up to the trade deadline, since it's accrued daily. So there's some flexibility from a salary cap standpoint. But generally speaking, if there's a lot of salary coming in, there's probably going to need to be some salary going out. There's, I mean, in what you've just mentioned, Mazer, Shine, Austin Watson probably can play some NHL games if need be. Lagesson, sure, probably, and then Cossa as well. But otherwise, no one's really banging down the door just yet, and that's fine. No, that's fine. And I do think Soderblom should be staying in with the Red Wings for a little while longer. He's earned it. But with this depth chart, again, I do feel like there's one top six quality player missing, possibly a center, could be a wing. But I think the biggest need right now is on defense. While Albert's been great playing with Edmondson, I do wonder if he'll tail off just from with the games just getting more and more intense down the stretch, and just this is his first taste or first season in the NHL. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but just something to keep an eye on. And Sherratt's been better this stint with Cider, but we have to remember earlier in the season there was a reason why we broke up that pair and put Evans in with Cider. Sherratt just couldn't cut it on the first pair, and that's fine. It's not what we signed him to be, but it's something to be conscious of down the stretch. So I guess in my opinion, I think top four defenseman is probably the biggest need right now. But it depends on what's out there and who's being offered. Before we start examining those options, I know that we have a bunch of prospects in the various junior leagues and overseas. Are there any that have impressed you that may make a big jump next season, heading into next season? Are there any who are maybe flying under the radar? Any who would be strong trade chips because we have just depth in that position? What are you seeing on from that side?
Well, of course, the when you talk about prospects that aren't, in our backyard in Grand Rapids, you got to start talking about Axel Sending Pellikka. I think he's probably the prospect that is closest to banging down the door right now. He just happens to be over in Sweden right now. I think that as far as untouchables go, I think he's in that category.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'd agree with that. It's the season he's had and the World Juniors he had. It would really take a lot for us to consider moving him, given the potential he has and how much he can bring to our blue line for sure.
yeah, he's a special player, so I would imagine we got to get a special player back to even consider making the move. Um, other kind of areas where maybe there's an opportunity to deal from strength or deal from depth, so to speak. Um, I do think that there's maybe not an abundance of left-handed defensemen, but there are some options. I think that I look at, not to bring it back to Grand Rapids here, but I look at William Wallander and I look at Shai Buim. I think that they're very similar in what they bring to the table. Um, they're a year apart just in terms of age, and I think that they both try to do a lot of the same things. William Wallender's a bit bigger, so he has maybe a few more intangibles, you might say, but I wouldn't write off Boom. I think he's a very talented player, and he's showing really well for himself in his first season. So then when you get beyond those two and you start looking at players like Emil Viro, um, I, I like Emil Viro, and he's been one player that I've enjoyed watching since we drafted him 5 years ago, but I think that he's someone that at the end of the day, if he can get a deal done, I think you include him. Um, other players that I think maybe you can do that with. Both the Dower Nielsen brothers. I think both of them have a lot of both of them over there in Sweden. Both of them have some really good skills. I think Noah Dower Nielsen is maybe a bit underrated. He actually is got a really good shot and some really good offensive instincts. And his brother is showing really well for himself in Sweden's second grade league. And he's got a lot of two-way ability too. So I think that they're both prospects I'm glad to have in the system, but I also think that they're prospects that if other teams are interested in, it wouldn't break my heart to see them included in a deal. I just think that there's other players that we have that can fill those roles too. Um, but yeah, I think generally what you see is there's some standout guys at honestly every position, at least two of them. And then once you get beyond those two, then you start to get into some repeat type of prospects, kind of like what I was getting at with Wallander and Boom, um, to where maybe you can remove one of them and it's going to be okay because you still have the other guy. Um, just maybe something to consider.
Now that's true because obviously having been rebuilding this team for the past, well, it depends on when you want to qualify the start, but since we got here the past 6 years, um, the prospect pool is pretty deep. in terms of volume and talent as well. But from a volume standpoint, we got to remember, like, even like moving into the future, that there are only so many players who can dress every night. There's only so many players who can be in the lineup. It's great to have depth. It's great to have secondary options just waiting in the minors, but not everyone can play. So this depth might be a solid asset for us to deal from if the right proposal came along. One other thing just to kind of note is that we do have some free agents, coming up this offseason. The cap's expected to go up as well, but Kane's contract is going to be up. Ideally, I want to keep at least 2 million, 2.5 million in cap space available in case he hits his bonuses, so that it doesn't get carried over to next season. Just have that flexibility, whether we need it or not. So he'll be a free agent this summer. Same with Fisher, same with Mott, Petrie, and Lyon and Husso as well. And then as far as restricted free agents go, it's definitely not like we had last summer with Raymond and Sider. This year it's just Berggren, Johansson, and Soderblom. So not major contracts. Obviously we're going to have to pay a little bit more to get them to sign, but nothing substantial. And if the salary cap's going to go up to 92, 93, 94, even higher next season, depending on what the league says, that could give us a lot of flexibility this summer. So I don't want to hamstring us too much. But I think the safe play is just to anticipate a 5% increase until we're told otherwise. Because the last thing we want is to overspend and have to shed salary and pay to do that. And we don't want to do that again. So I think that just about covers it. Anything else from the prospect side that we need to cover before moving towards the deadline? Is there any player that you really want to get up with the big team, or is there any player that you see as like a really strong trade chip that other teams are scouting and strongly valuing?
Well, I think that there will come a day where we have to think about our two top tier goalie prospects in Kosa and Trey Augustine over in Michigan State. I think it's a great luxury that we have both, and I'm in no rush to move either of them. But I do think that the day will come where we maybe have to make a decision on one or the other. Boston had to do it with Allmark and Swayman, right? And I think that if the right player is available and that team wants one of our goalies, depending on the offer, I think we can at least consider it. It's the luxury of having two of them is you can get rid of one and you still have the other guy. So like I said, I'm in no rush to move either guy. I'm very happy we have both, but I don't think it's a definite no if a team asks for one of our goalies. And then also for what it's worth, I think it's great what Marco Kasper has done this season. I think that he's shown that he is an NHL player, and I think that even better, he's showing some versatility as a winger and as a centerman. And I'm not saying that Kasper should be a trade chip. I'm actually going to use this to pivot to Nate Danielson, because I think that Nate Danielson and Marco Kasper profile very similarly, and kind of a running theme right now is when you have multiple of one thing, it's okay if you get rid of one of them. I think that Danielson is going to be a really, really good piece for us if we keep him. Could be a top tier matchup centerman in 5 years. Remember what Connor Bedard said about him in his before he was drafted, right? But I also think that you have to give to get in this league, and I think that knowing that we also got Axel Sinning Pellikka out of that same draft and in the first round, I think that maybe Nate Danielson isn't completely untouchable in my mind. Would take a lot for me to be okay with getting rid of him, but just like the idea of maybe giving up on one of the goalies, I could maybe be convinced to move on from Nate Danielson if the player coming back or the pieces coming back are going to end up helping out this team and are helping out our organization in the long term.
So just to kind of recap what we've discussed so far, there is a good bit of prospect depth to deal from if we want to go down that route. There's only a couple RFAs to worry about this summer: Soderblom, Berggren, and Johansson, with the cap going up by at least 5%. As far as our major unrestricted free agents go, it's Kane, it's Fisher, Mott, Petrie, Lyon, Husso. So at the very least, we're going to need to replace a top six forward this summer, if not sooner. And ideally, we don't want to hamstring ourselves from a cap perspective. Yes, it would be great to add anyone, but we do want to be conscious of what we're committing to from a salary cap standpoint, just for the flexibility that we want to have heading into the summer. But it really does depend on what's being offered and what we're hearing from other teams. But yeah, as far as needs go, what we had talked about was a top four defenseman is probably the biggest need right now. I think we could be okay riding our group down the stretch, but adding a top four defenseman would solidify us. It would allow us to slot our current defenseman a little better. Could also help with the penalty kill, which we do need to improve on. And in a top six forward, it would have to be the right player. And we also don't want to mess with our team chemistry a little bit. This team's been down in the dumps, and we've seen how poorly they've played, and they're finally back up. They're finally riding a wave of positivity and momentum. So we don't want to mess with that too much, just because we've seen what could happen if that gets rattled. All right, so we got a few trade proposals, so let's go through them and decide if we want to move forward or not. Offer from Kyle Dubas is offering Marcus Pettersson and wants in return Shai Buyam and a second round pick in this year's draft. Now, as a reminder, Pettersson is a free agent after this season, so I like the player. I think he'd be a great fit, but I think I'd rather pursue him as a free agent. I'm not saying no to this outright, but I'm not certain that's the move right now. It would be great to get ahead of the free agent market and get a deal done with him at the tail end of the season leading up to July 1st. That there is some upside to that, because I do think, like I said, he would be a great fit. He's the right type of player to skate next to Axel Standi-Pellikka over the next 3-4 years. But a second is a lot, let alone adding Shai Buyam in there too, for a rental player who there's no guarantee that we're going to be re-signing. Let's talk about that second real quick. How are you feeling about this year's draft class? And if we're going to be picking somewhere in the middle of the second round, more than likely, around pick, say 45 to 55, we'll say somewhere in there. How do you feel about giving that up for a possible rental player with this year's class?
Well, I think that you would definitely get a good little prospect with that second round pick. Seemingly, it doesn't really matter what draft class you're talking about. There's always talent available, even when you get into the late end of the second round. So, again, I'd love to keep those picks. So I'm not super, giddy about the idea of giving it up, but I also acknowledge that our fans are, they want playoff hockey at Little Caesars Arena, and so do we. And I think that there comes a time and a place to be willing to give up these picks. And I think that this might be the type of thing where it can make sense. I agree. I don't like the idea of adding Bloom to this, especially with it being a rental. I think I like this offer a lot more if we are able to work out an extension with Pedersen before making the deal, because then there's just some cost assurance there. I would hate to give up on a prospect like Boom on a rental, let alone add that pick there. So for me, I don't hate the offer. I can live without the second round pick, and I can ultimately give up Boom if I know that the player I'm getting back is going to be around for a little while. So maybe ask Kyle if we could talk to his agent.
Are there any players that you'd sub in for Bouillon where he'd be a little bit more comfortable with this kind of trade? Because I hate to see this opportunity, pass us by. Because if we say no, there's no guarantee that Pedersen stays with Pittsburgh and then is available at the free agent market. He could get dealt elsewhere. That team could sign him. Like there's no guarantees with any of this. But is there any other prospect that you would sub in here?
I might sound crazy, but I'd be willing to sub in William Wallander. He's just a year older, and I've seen more of him to where I kind of know I'm more comfortable with where he's at in terms of what his upside is and what his maybe downside is. I'm still very excited about Bloom. I'm still excited about Wallander, but I think that um, I may be just a little bit more excited about Bloom. And so I guess if we have to make this deal and they have to get one of our kind of second tier defensive prospects, I think it's got to be Wallander.
Okay. Dubas did say that they do not want to retain salary, which is fine. They only have one spot left. So, not ideal. It'd be great if they could retain some of that salary just to make it worth our while. But it is what it is. Um, I can certainly inquire about William Wallander, but I know, like thinking about. All right, let's just think about this for a second. Let's say we do make this move. Let's say it's Wallander in a second for Pedersen. If we move forward with that and we want to sign Pedersen to a new contract, we're looking at somewhere between like 5.5 and 6 million a season for him, based on recent signings and his age and his role. Is that something we want to commit to? Because like that's like while his cap hit's about 4 million now, and we can afford that without having to move salary. A 2 million bump from that, we may need to move someone in the off season to offset that a little bit to maintain some flexibility. What do you think about that? At least that contract moving forward, if he's getting like 5 years as a 29, will be 29 as a 29-year-old.
Well,
At least 5 years between 5.5 and 6.
well, I don't know if you're on social media as much as I am, Steve, but the people on X app really do not like your free agent signings. They think that's the weakest part of your game, and I worry that giving Marcus Pedersen a 5-year deal at six whatever $1 million kind of maybe comes with a red flag. And I do agree that Pedersen would be a good fit. I actually think he'd look really good next to Sider. I think that he would look good next to Sending Pelika when he arrives. I think he just kind of fits well, but I also think that that is $6 million that um, could be spent on other players that would fill out the roster better. And you kind of, and instead of investing in this veteran, you can keep the pick and the prospect that are cost controlled, and you don't have to overextend to make them interested in your team. In general, I actually don't want to make this deal. I don't want to give up on Boom. I don't want to give up on Wallander. I don't want to give up on the second round pick. But I do acknowledge that we got to do something to help our team have its best chance to make the playoffs. And I guess where I'm at is I wouldn't want to overextend to give us that little bump to make the playoffs just for that player to walk out the door in free agency, or we end up having to overpay or whatever. So I know I'm saying like two different things right now, but um, I guess what it comes down to is what you think is in our best interests in terms of immediate success as well as long term success. Because I think one choice very much favors one path, and then the other choice kind of favors the other path.
It is tough because obviously I look this from the perspective of like building the team and for long-term sustainable success. And you're right, like giving up on Buyam or Wallinder. Yeah, no, I'm not ready to do that just yet. They haven't reached their peak yet, and there's a strong chance that they could turn into another Marcus Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we do need to cut the cord at some point. Like we have a deep prospect pool, and we haven't reached the playoffs in a long time. And it's not just about going there; it's about getting fans in the door, getting people invested in this team, showing the team that we're committed to them, and bringing in a player like this could do that because Pedersen does have strong 5-on-5 numbers. He would look great next to Sandin Pellikka down the road. He would look great next to Sider. He would look great next to Albert Johansson. But it's tough. So, and he can contribute to the penalty kill as well. He's been one of Pittsburgh's best penalty killers all season, which is obviously a huge need of ours. Uh, you know, with where things have been this season so far, even since we brought in McClellan. So let's hold on this one. Maybe we don't reply just yet. Let's see what else is out there, and we can follow up. Do have one more email from Jim Rutherford, and wants to know if we want to make one last pitch for Elias Pettersson before he makes a decision. I know there's a bunch of teams still interested. I know Buffalo is one. He said there are others. We'll see how many others there are, but right now the ask is a first, a third, Rasmussen, Comfort, Danielson, and Augustine for Pettersson. Now, that's quite a bit for one player, especially one who's making 11.6 million and will be making that for 7 more years beyond this one. And it's 3 million more than our highest paid player makes. We can afford that from a salary cap perspective, but it's going to alter the pecking order in the room a little bit. And I do know that there's been a little bit of things have been uncomfortable in Vancouver. So not saying it's Pettersson, not saying it has to do with how much money people are making, but there's smoke from the Red Wings, the NHL team's perspective. Like if we're moving Rasmussen and Comfort, I would prefer that to be for another center, which Pettersson is. That I think we could tolerate. That would bump Kopp down to the third line. It would slot in Veleno on the fourth line with Pettersson on the second. You can mix and match the players in the top six with Casper and Pettersson and Larkin all being able to play center. But a first and a third, and the third doesn't bother me obviously so much, but the first and Danielson and Augustine, that's a lot from our prospect pipeline.
Yeah, it is. I guess my question, because we talked about this. Danielson and Augustine are both players that are theoretically available for the right player, and if Elias Pettersson isn't the right player, then who is? I don't know that Connor McDavid's going to become available anytime soon. So what are we if we're willing to move these guys, who are we actually willing to move them for? I do wonder if they are asking a little too much, though. I kind of go back to the Jack Eichel um, trade from a couple years ago with Vegas. They didn't give up, two of their top prospects, and they gave up a really good player in Alex Tuck, and they gave up Peyton Krebs and a first round pick. Those are all good pieces, but Augustine could very well be our organization schoolie of the future. Until Kosa does it, he's not it. He's just, I mean, he's in the same level as Augustine. Um, and then Danielson, he could very well be our top center in a few years. But I guess maybe that's the point here is he could be that, whereas we know that Pedersen he is that type of player. And boy, would he look good with Lucas Raymond. Oh, that would be so much fun. Not to mention the other Swedes in our organization. But I guess from where I stand, the ask is a little rich, but I don't blame them for asking for it. They have a really good player, and they're not going to want to sell him at a discount.
I wonder if this is more of an off-season move though, because this would significantly alter the locker room. And like I was saying before, it's finally in a good place, and this would, like I said, be a significant change. My biggest holdup is just the futures that are being dealt here. It's the first, it's Danielson, it's Augustine. Augustine playing like a first round pick, even though if he was a second. So that's essentially 3 firsts for Pedersen. I'm not sure I want to make this move now. That's the if we were if Pedersen is still being discussed in the offseason, I think that's the time to move. But this would be an earth-shattering move for the team, and I'm not confident that our team can handle that right now. It would be great to get Elias Pettersson for sure, but I don't know if this is something that we can do right now.
I look at what Carolina Hurricanes just did with the Colorado Avalanche in making that big trade for Martin Necas and Mikko Rantanen. Uh, like you said, those teams just dramatically altered their locker rooms and just their mix altogether. And I think that they can get away with doing that, especially Carolina, because they're right there. They're trying to win a Stanley Cup this year, and they have the wherewithal and the assets and the motive to go out and get a big fish like a Rantanen, even like a Natchez too. We aren't there yet. You and I both know that we aren't there yet. We're still trying to become a playoff team, and I think that until we are a piece or two away from competing for a Stanley Cup, I don't know that we can make these types of moves in season. I do agree. This is a move that we can maybe revisit in the off season. Let's see how this season ends. Let's see how our locker room handles another playoff chase, and then we can kind of take stock of things from there and see where we're at. I agree. I would not want to dramatically shake up this locker room any more than we did when we changed head coach.
So let's just get back to the deal that Pittsburgh sent over Marcus Pettersson for a second, and I can propose back Wallinder. I think this is the move. If we make this move, we're not giving up any assets that could be used for Pettersson or a Pettersson-like player in the offseason. We're not mortgaging the future more than we can tolerate. We really do need a solid top 4 defenseman moving into the future with Edvinsson and Sider and Sandin Pellikka. Pettersson would be the right player, in my opinion, because we don't have anyone else who can conceivably slot into the top 4 now or moving into the future, given our prospect pipeline. I think William and Wallinder and even Tuomisto on the right side, they can be players. They can play on, and they can be bottom pair players. But I don't think they're anything more than that. And Johansson, while he's been fantastic in the second pair with Edvinson. I don't know if I feel comfortable penciling him into that role indefinitely. If we have to slot him into the third pair, I think that's a nice luxury to have. And we do need penalty kill help and 5-on-5 defensive help, and Pettersson brings that. I think the juice is worth the squeeze here. Any final thoughts on this to try to convince me otherwise?
Just see if you can. We're ultimately giving up some cost assurance by giving up a prospect and giving up a possible another good prospect with that second round pick. So I guess I would just again encourage you to try to get as much cost assurance as you can. If you're not acquiring him with an extension, maybe see if we can work out a way to include Justin Hall in this deal, because we're adding a defenseman, but we need to move a body out, and that also helps the numbers work out a little bit more as well. Might need to massage the deal a little bit more if we do that, but I think it's just another way to make sure that we're not pigeonholing ourselves a little too much by bringing in a player that we might end up wanting to sign, if not right away, then in the off season.
I think we probably need to add in a sweetener if we're adding in Justin Hall. Since we're already getting rid of a second, and I'd like to keep all my 2026 draft picks in the event we want to do an offer sheet, who would you be comfortable throwing in with Wallinger in a second, along with Hall?
I would ask them to take a look at our prospect pool. I think we have a good understanding of who we really don't want to give up and who's maybe a bit more, we have a bit more freedom to move. If there's a name that stands out to them that they really have interest in and it makes sense for us, then yeah, go ahead and include them. If it's a draft pick, maybe we can work out something where maybe a distant second can be the thing that we give them, maybe a 2028 or something like that.
All right, I'll do this. I'll propose back Pettersson, no contract guaranteed, but we're giving up Hall, we're giving up Wallinger, second in this year's pick, and I'll see if they have any interest in a mid-tier prospect in our system, and we'll see if Dubas goes for that. It should be amenable because it's kind of similar to the Gensel deal last year. Was a combination of NHL players kind of filling spots and prospects. So yeah, I'll propose that back.
We hope that you enjoyed our pre-trade deadline discussion, looking over our players in Detroit, players in Grand Rapids, in the system, kind of what Kris Draper and Steve Yzerman might be discussing as the trade deadline draws closer. We tried something a little different. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know that Tony and I had a lot of fun doing it. So looking ahead, we are currently recording just at puck drop right now, actually at the Red Wings Oilers game here on Thursday night. Moving ahead, we've got the Red Wings against the Calgary Flames on Saturday, and then the following day against the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe they'll talk about that Pettersson deal that we talked about early, just a little bit ago. And then they round out the week before our next recording on Tuesday night against the Seattle Kraken. A bunch of games out on the West Coast, so hope you guys get your naps in the evening because a lot of late games this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, X, Blue Sky, Apple Music. Again, anywhere you are, we are there too. Be sure to give us a holler. Be sure to leave us a comment if you're watching us on YouTube. Want to answer any questions you have. Thank you again for watching. Thank you again for listening. And until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus Channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.